Judge, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows what a positive work-life balance might look like. And I'm pretty sure every one of us wants to achieve this work-life balance, either right now or once we enter the workforce. Before we move on into the positive material of our case, firstly, a depiction of what our world might look like on our side. We allow workers to have, to an extent, control over their working hours all around the world. Companies and agencies might still be able to require employees to work for a total number of, for example, X number of hours per week, a total of Y night shifts per week. But what's different from like opposition from us maybe is that all around the world, workers can now choose how to allocate these hours and shifts according to what they believe is most beneficial for them. So the total amount of time that they work still stays the same. It's just that the amount of time per day, the amount of time for this shift has changed. And this change is according to the workers' preferences, according to their own lives. Now moving on to our positive material. Firstly, I'll be talking about how we improve work-life balance. And there are two tiers to this. First, on productivity. In the status quo, we have workers in all sorts of jobs like offices and sales industries and customer service sectors. And all of these people, they actually face a lot of expectations from agencies. But what makes this worse is how they have no ability to control the amount of time they are required to spend at work every day. They are forced to work constantly for 9 hours for 5 consecutive days, for example. And when their superiors call them out for longer additional shifts, for example, at night, it's hard to say no because of the pressure that you feel in your workplace. It's very natural for you to feel that you need to concede to your superiors because there's always that fear of you being like offensive or like insulting to your superiors. So this all causes people to become more exhausted in their workplace in this status quo. There's another significant factor that slows down the productivity of workers overall. And this we identify as the mindset. So there's a current norm against workers. I think this norm exists in a lot of places. It goes, going to work is tiring. It drains the life energy out of me. It's normal for workers to dislike being in the workplace. It's normal for them to dislike having to take time out of their lives for work because they need to earn money. And this is one of the only ways they have the means to do so. So they associate offices and jobs with, for example, mental breakdowns and burning out because of the amount of work they have, etc. Because they see their jobs as a part of their lives they have little control over. Literally, their companies are the ones who are able to govern this sector of their lives. They have little to no say about it. This mindset contributes to lower productivity levels because the mindset causes people to naturally not want to proactively contribute their fullest to the company and to the economy. What changes on our side then? We have 4 words: same time, more freedom. We give workers the ability to not only fulfill their company's needs, but also give themselves more opportunities to rest when they feel it's necessary, giving themselves some more periodic and often short breaks compared to one single lunch break every day. There's more time for them to recharge and relax according to their own needs because every individual we think is different. Every individual's needs is different. We think that this can also change the workplace spirit. There are 2 reasons why. Firstly, we are able to give workers more freedom. And secondly, we allow workers to feel more lively because they have more time to do what they want at what time each day. This results in a very positive cycle which compels them to work even more. So the impact of this is increased productivity, where we allow workers to feel validated by superiors because superiors are now allowing these workers to have some control over their life. This validation is very important in encouraging workers to give their best to the company. This allows workers to become more open to actually treat their workplace like their homes. This results in a more positive mood overall and more positive mentality from what exists right now in the status quo. It's only when there's actually good welfare of workers that there can be workers that are more proactive and willing to put in their best effort. This results in better local economy and because it stimulates more economic growth. Now, moving on to the second tier about enriching your life experience. This looks like tailoring their own, like workers' own time to their own needs, which means when people are able to adjust their own schedule to allow more time for other equally important activities. Because in life, We don't think that work is the only thing that one should focus on. We think there are more other equally important activities. For example, your family matters, your individual happiness. These are all sectors of your life that people are able to develop, that people are able to feel happy in. We don't want workers to always have to be forced by their companies to work for long hours in their companies, in their workspaces. So a big problem that many families, many workers face right now might be that both parents, both adults go out early and come back late because of work. There's too little time remaining for familial matters and for family bonding. There are two impacts of this. Firstly, there might be like a falling out between the husband and wife, their relationship. Because the less they talk with each other every day, the less they're able to understand and comfort each other and listen to each other about the woes of their everyday lives, the woes about their work. And the less time that they spend with each other, the less time they have fun and do things to maintain a healthy and positive relationship with each other. And the second negative impact of what's happening to status quo is that this harms the child if they have children. So children need constant support from their parents, especially if they're young. And for students, they have school matters, they need advice and supervision. They need to maintain a healthy relationship with their parents. And we think that on our side, flexible working hours allows parents to tailor their working hours to be able to sustain not only the relationship between the pair, but also between the parent and child. So this is important to make sure workers are also able to maintain other relationships outside of work and have fun in other aspects of life. This not only helps to improve that one worker's living conditions, their life experience, but also has a net benefit on other people this person interacts with, for example, children and friends. Furthermore, this worker might have more time to be able to play by themselves, be able to be happy by themselves, because personal time is equally important as work. They need time for self-validation. They need this as a time to recharge and become more productive in their work. For all that, I'm very proud to propose.
The most important thing in this debate is about what method is actually beneficial for the employees on the ground and which method can motivate them with higher productivities. So actually, the government side talk about how they can achieve mental and economic social benefits for those employees and for the whole society. However, we think that all the things they say is too idealistic. They didn't take into consideration of the nature of people. And actually, on our side, we can achieve these two benefits better. So first of all, a few setups. So for the flexible time working things, first of all, you have flexible time to do other things, but your attention will be highly separated. For example, your friend during flexible time, she wants to relax. However, she asks you to hang out with her. So your time is being separated by your friend. And second of all, it is your children who want you to play with them. Then your attention in the home will be actually separated by your children. You cannot refuse that because said by government that you need more time to stay with your family. So actually your time contributed to work actually decrease. And second of all, you have an objective to do within the flexible week, and you can choose either to work a little every day or work the whole things within only 1 day. This means that the employees are quite separated and they cannot meet together in a same time. So what is the impact of this? If you are doing some work such as designing work, you need to have meetings together to brainstorm for your ideas and create more things and discuss in a very certain place such as the working place. However, with the flexible working time, you cannot have those opportunities to stay up together and to meet whenever you want. So this highly reduces the productivity on our side. So let's look at the fixed business time situation. First of all, workers are fixed with their schedule and do their own jobs on time, or you will be reduced to your salaries. This means that during an 8-hour shift every day, you need to do your objectives your employer asks you to do, or that you will be reduced to your salaries. So that during the work time, the employees, they have incentive to do all their objectives needed to be done, which means that every day you need to have an objectives to do, and during the 8-hour shift, you are just stick to your work plate and you are more concentrated. And secondly, the boss will make the aims and goals proper to the employees because they know that every day you only work for 8 hours. They have more standards for the boss to like separate the objectives for you to achieve. So moving on to our arguments, we think that fixed schedule can reduce the laziness and then increase the productivity of all the employers. So we all know that the nature of human is that they have laziness if they do not have a very fixed schedule, which means that they cannot help they cannot help like relaxing themselves during these unfixed times. So so if you have a very fixed schedule, you can actually be fixed with that. And the possibility of laziness will be highly reduced. So what is the impact of this? Actually,
Point, ma'am.
if during the flexible working hours, there are more social disorders. For example, if you are a hospital worker or a like police worker during the flexible time, your police officers in the police station is not enough. So if there is a very urgent thing for you to solve, you cannot meet together and achieve the aim you want to do. And second of all, we think in our status quo, we can reduce the pressure of the people. They can actually have less mental pressure. Why is it so? Because now, even in business hours, people are trying to compete over each other, and they want to do as much as possible in the fixed business hours. However, if they have flexible hours and more time to work, they will compete even harsher because they know that if they don't compete with each other, they will be just fired or just blamed by their employers, which means that more flexible time means more time people will sacrifice their relaxing time and compete with each other. That is the situation nowadays in the modern society. So actually, if we gave them flexible hours, they will at the end of the day choose to sacrifice their relaxing time and compete with each other. So this actually
Point,
creates
ma'am.
more stress for the employees. Yes, what's that, POI?
All right, maximum amounts of overtime hours are already a regulation that exists on both sides. Please, respond.
Well, actually, we think flexible time means that a flexible time is you can choose how to allocate your time for working. And we think that flexible time means that you need to choose between relaxing time and working time. There is no limit about what maximum time will you be working. Yes, so turning on to our argument, we think that the employer will actually working saying, oh, this week is the flexible working time. Since you have more time, you can do more job for me. So therefore, if you don't accept the work you have to do, other people who would like to do extra work in flexible working time will be stuck to their positions and you may be fired. So on our side, we benefit those employees who need a proper working time, and in the business time, they will be fixed to the 8-hour work every day. If the boss of the company urged them to do extra work, at least on our side, we have like labor institution and negotiating power. And those negotiating power is so powerful because you have proof to say that you only need to work maximum for like 8 hours every day. So on our side, we actually have bigger impacts that we achieve those mental health for the employees and economic benefits for those like less social disturbance in the society. Proud to oppose.
Panel, we think the most problematic claim coming from side opposition in that previous speech was that, first of all, you would temper the laziness of most employees, tap into the quote-unquote intrinsic nature of humans to be lazy and goof off during work. And second of all, there was this strange case about how companies would use this opportunity to exploit their workers. Now, I want to do these claims one by one, right? So first of all, under this quote unquote like laziness that they try to attribute to workers on our side of the house, we've already told you that most of the time it's not really laziness per se that keeps workers from being their most productive, right? Rather, it's the pressure of being forced into a room that you don't want to be in for 8 hours every single day and only having 2 days of rest in between, right? We told you already time and time again that allowing workers pockets of time to spend, for example, with family or friends, is not something that is going to make them more lazy. Rather, the opposite is true in that workers are going to be more incentivized to focus exclusively on work during the hours that they do request to work, and therefore less likely to become distracted and more likely to become more productive, right? So I don't see how this is a harm on our side of the house. Rather, it is the harm of decreasing productivity on like in workers, as we've seen in the transition away from like home-based working towards physical work as well. More people are, for instance, quiet quitting after work hours. More people are just generally being distracted during the work hours as well, leading to a decreased productivity. Unless opposition comes up with claims or like solutions or just concrete mechanisms as to how they're going to reduce the stress associated with the 8 hour work week a day with standardized business hours, they cannot take this clash and this hours by default. Now, second of all, this claim that there will be harsher competition between workers on our side of the house. Now, we do agree and we do concede that yes, competition is something that's going to exist on both sides. However, I disagree with the claim that it will be so much more serious on our side that it will warrant the claims of increased mental health concerns made by them, right? So, first of all, I want to point out that in most cases, like regulations against like excessive overtime hours is already a thing in current status quo, as stated in my POI. Therefore, it is highly unlikely and just impossible in most nations for these people to just book like so many overtime hours that they end up stressing themselves up just for a promotion, right? And we do agree that most of the time, like most people want to be generally competitive in a job, and that's something that is fueled by the intrinsic motivation to do better. Rather, we would much rather that be fueled by intrinsic motivation than it is for like the mere promise of like a promotion or a bit of higher pay, right? And we also see that most of the time, on their side of the house, their workers are the ones facing like this stress in the first place, right? Because workers that don't participate in the corporate rat race are inherently bound by social norms within the office to stay for like higher like overtime hours. It's the standardization of shoving so many people into one place at the same time that causes this peer pressure to form and therefore causes the very harms that they try to attribute to our side of the house. So even if we did accept that, yes, there might be a bit more overtime on our side of the house, we see that the outcomes of this competition are, first of all, one that is unlikely to manifest in such catastrophic ways as side opposition claims them to be. And second of all, we'll also recognize that it is up to the individual themselves to decide what hours are comfortable with them and also like just how much work they're comfortable with a week in general. Now, with that out of the way, onto my positive material. I'm gonna run a few extensions today on my side of the house, and I'm gonna detail with specific mechanisms like the many benefits, the many exclusive benefits on our side of the house. If opposition is to take down our case, they'll have to respond to every one of these like just independent benefits, right? So first of all, as a company, you're going to reduce your upfront cost by a lot. What do I mean by this? I mean that in status quo, when you have a standardized business hours and you have to provide, first of all, a working space for so many people at once, you cannot make very dynamic arrangements as to where you're going to put your workers. This means that a company is forced to, for instance, rent out a larger than necessary space within a building, and then this building is going to be empty for 2 days in a week. The opposite on our side is true, in which like most companies, because of flexible work arrangements, we have less people working in an office at a given time. Therefore, it's much easier for them to book, for example, a smaller and cheaper venue, or even just like increase the amenities of a smaller venue to fit like the same amount of cost, right? So there's only two alternatives that are possible and just like I don't know, the companies are willing to take on our side. First of all, if they're more benevolent, they can like book a smaller venue and just use the extra surplus value to just like I don't know, like just like furbish up the place and make it a bit nicer for your workers to work in. Second of all, even if we accept that most companies are for profit and not willing to spend that much on worker welfare, it's much easier, it's much less costly in general for a company to book a much smaller venue for like a non-standardized set of people that work there. Now, second of all, this the policy on our side of the house that we push today is one that like promotes a much healthier lifestyle. What I mean by this, there's two layers of analysis that I bring to the table today. First of all, you just have more time upfront as a worker to, for example, engage in activities like exercise. You also, as a worker, have much less stress For instance, when you're selecting a meal or when you have to I don't know, set out time to cook. Therefore, it makes it such that in the terms of diet and exercise, most workers on our side are going to have much more surplus time to plan out what is healthiest for them. Therefore, just have better physical condition in general, right? This is not something that they're able to guarantee on their side of the house because they don't have the benefit of giving workers agency over their own time. Now, second of all, the second tier of analysis is that actually are compatible with just the existing natural circadian rhythms of people. But before I get into that, is there a POI? 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh, time anyway. Right. So on our side of the house, when you have more flexible work hours, you're able to let people basically adhere to the natural circadian rhythms, therefore have better quality of sleep and just better physical condition in general. We think the greatest lie on their side of the house that specified working hours has forced onto society is the changing of their natural circadian rhythms to fit the profit incentives of a company. We see that this is entirely unjustified, as first of all, a company has a duty of care towards its workers to provide the best possible welfare that it can, and we see that flexible working arrangements are simply the easiest and most convenient way to do that, right? So the more positive gain as a company on our side of the house is they are more able to just very easily enforce the same amount of, first of all, productivity on our side of the house. Productivity is in fact higher on our side of the house as a company. You stand to gain more if you buy into flexible working arrangements. Second of all, you get to increase your reputation within a society if people are willing to see a company as much more benevolent, if they are not shackled by both the constraints of time and the task that is at hand, if they are to buy into this flexible work arrangement in the first place. And lastly, a world with flexible work arrangements is just one that is better for workers in general and ensures that and is the most easy way to make companies accountable for the cost that they bring onto society, for the stresses that they place upon people working in environments in the current day and age. For this reason, for a less stressful urban world and for a less stressful just work arrangement in general, go with side proposition.
So first of all, I would like to talk about what the government said about more dynamic and more flexible working hours for companies. So I would like to point out that although they do talk about the incentive for individuals and companies to gain more flexibility, they lack analysis on why they have the capacity to allocate all that time and money effectively. So first of all, let's consider this, right? So for example, for small companies, you need consistent work, you need consistent energy and effort to build your company to make sure that it can brave the market, right? But then if everyone's scattered and everyone doesn't show up on time, or everyone shows up at different situations, then basically you can't really have this consistent effort that pushes the company forward, right? And second of all, even if you consider large companies with larger firms, they have a lot of inner turmoil if everyone's just being flexible or so-called flexible, because for example, if you have all these layers, all these people within your company, and you want to allocate every single one of them to make sure that your schedules fits, it simply isn't capable. They aren't capable of allocating it correctly. And then they also talk about benefits for workers, giving them more freedom and enriching life experience, but we tell you the exact opposite, which links to our second argument on social disorder. And I will build on this within terms of individuals and then explain its impact on the overall society. First of all, for individuals, right? So people pursue different things. Some pursue work, or some prioritize family, some prioritize their own personal freedom, and thus they are likely to allocate their own time according to their own personal needs. Like, for example, are you a workaholic who would rather spend loads of time working in an office, or do you want to allocate more family time, or would you like to travel while you work, etc.? Everyone has different answers. And also, even further, note that emotions as universal, which means that people from different cultural backgrounds and different upbringings have a different sense of time, and they have different punctualities. And now by supporting this policy, they now have the capacity to do whatever they like with their time, which means they have no shared schedule, and that results within disorder. So they have the incentive and the capacity to do so. And the impact, we have several layers. First of all is unstable income, because flexible schedules and the potential for increased reliance on part-time or part-time jobs could lead towards less job security and stability for the workers. Originally, income is paid depending on working hours, right? Now it's all mixed up, and you can take a lot of jobs, but sometimes it gets confusing. And second of all is a lack of socialization. If you don't even get to meet most of the people you work with, you don't know how to cooperate, you don't actually communicate effectively. And third is familial disputes. So there's a blurred line now between work and rest. You could rest while you're working and work while you're resting. And you could rest when you're supposed to work and realize that the deadline is approaching, and then start working frantically, for example, on a family vacation. And it's hard to allocate all that time. And fourth, and most importantly, is unprotected rights in the workplace. So for example, think about labor unions, right? Their bargaining power comes from group workers, from collective power, right? But everyone's so flexible, and you can't even get to gather the same number of people in one single place. And how can you actually bargain with the employers for like better working conditions, right? So for example, you have all these forms of industrial action, you have like sit-ins or strikes or etc. But that simply wouldn't be able to happen if the workers all are scattered. They don't have a sense of collectiveness that these trade unions need, right? And then, okay, moving on towards overall impact on society. First of all, we tell you there is a huge disruption towards essential services. Like, for example, if you have like flexible work arrangements, you can disrupt the coordination necessary for like operation of sectors like healthcare or education or public safety. Like, for example, if you have doctors and like the doctors might be unavailable when their patients need help, or if you have teachers, for example, you have to have a set schedule to make sure that you show up on time for your students so that you can teach them, right? But then if you don't arrive on time for students, they don't get their education. And third, for police, right? So when there is a lack of police forces, like with like thefts or robberies or severe crimes, it can get really confusing because these crimes often arise during unanticipated hours, and therefore there's no way for you to actually have the capacity to allocate all that time effectively. And fourth, even worse could be transportation, right? They have these critical services like public transportation, like subways or maybe public buses. Then if you don't really operate those on time, then how can you really make sure that like your society will function effectively, right? And or even worse, like even if shops simply don't open up on time, like this erases all of Gov's arguments on like self-enrichment simply because many services open up on unpredictable hours and are unavailable most of the time. And second of all, the second huge part is less social cohesion, because like the fragmentation and lack of like coordination in daily routines, it could undermine a sense of community and social cohesion within a society. Like it could potentially contribute towards like a lack in like a collective action, for example, volunteering, or as I've talked about, labor unions. Like you can't really bargain collectively, you can't advocate for things if you're not there, right? And therefore we tell you that in comparison, although they focus a lot on like productivity, we tell you that it simply isn't possible to have a high productivity. Like although individuals could have high productivity if they're good at allocating their own time, there's no way government can actually assert that all of them will be able to have the same sense of time and to work cohesively and to also be like productive on their own. Whereas on our side, we tell you that in our world, we have high productivity because everything's set in place. At least you know when you're supposed to do something, right? Everyone has a collective sense of like where they're working towards and what they're supposed to do the next day and like how they could achieve their goals. And also on our side, we have better social benefits because we protect the rights of people and because people still have at least the freedom on the weekends to do what they like. So we're not saying that on our side, there's like a lack of freedom or enriching life experience, etc. We tell you that on our side, we have more freedom and more enriching life because people can allocate their time better and therefore save more time towards their favorite hobbies or families, towards their friends, and therefore there's more sense of structure and for society to function. On their side, there's chaos, and on our side, there's order and freedom at the same time. Therefore, we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
To the father who can't make it to his daughter's preschool play to get his promotion, to the overworked nurse who works a 9 to 5, to the mother who can't watch over her son sleep because she has to rush to her job, opposition tells you too bad. We think that the ignorance of the duty of care towards your employees for the trade-off of profit is not only egregious but detrimental to the well-being of citizens. The question in this debate is therefore not about which side makes more money. The question in this debate is about the extent of which we view the well-being of individuals as a moral quest, which can only be exclusively achieved on our side of the house, which I'll be explaining later on. Two questions for the house today. First, on which side makes individuals happier and more productive? Second, on which side protects the individual's workspace conditions? So first, which side makes individuals happier and more productive? So the entirety of opposition's practical argument is based on the assertion that it reduces laziness because people inherently are lazy, which is the problem in the status quo. Three responses. Firstly, my first and second speakers already told you that this is just not
so
true.
sorry
They
to
told
interrupt.
you.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, I got
Yeah.
disconnected. I got disconnected for a while.
Do you want me to
and then
restart?
yeah, given that it just started, do you mind restarting?
Yeah, it's okay. No
Yeah,
worries.
really sorry about that.
It's okay. No worry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I just
Okay,
got
sure.
disconnected
No
for a few
worries.
seconds.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. To the father who can't make it to his daughter's preschool play to get his promotion, to the overworked nurse who works a 9 to 5, to the mother who can't watch over her son sleep because she has to rush to her job, opposition tells you
too bad. We think that the ignorance of the duty of care towards your employees for the trade-off of profits is not only egregious, but detrimental to the well-being of citizens. The question in this debate is therefore not about which side makes more money. The question in this debate is about the extent in which we view the well-being of individuals as a moral quest. So, two questions for the House today. First, on which side makes individuals happier and more productive. Second, on which side promotes cohesion in the workspace. So first question, which side makes individuals happier and more productive? The entirety of opposition's practical arguments based on the assertion that it reduces laziness because people are inherently lazy. Three responses. Firstly, my first and second speakers already told you that this is just not true. They told you that the issue in the status quo is that the most individuals are miserable, spending hours on end at office job, mindlessly typing away because employers are likely to exploit them for money. Laziness exists on side opposition as well. This is supported by opposition's own logic, since they say every single human being can be lazy. This means that whatever harms that exist are symmetrical in this debate. There are always going to be employees slacking off during work, secretly watching Netflix behind their computer screens, no matter whether we have flexible work hours or not. There are fewer lazy people on our side. The reason workers may be lazy sometimes is because they are mentally and physically exhausted. What employers may see as laziness will seconds their minds, regardless of whether it's just for 10 seconds. What does is this is a direct response to their point about how your attention and time will be divided elsewhere because people aren't NPCs. They need breaks. Secondly, cost. Flexible working hours reduces overhead costs as companies require less work office spaces and related expenses, which also reduces the manpower crunch. Thirdly, emotional well-being is closely linked to the work-life balance. Flexible working arrangements ultimately lead to higher job satisfaction and a more positive outlook towards one's job. Even if they do have extra time, we say that's good. Good! Employees can spend more quality time with their families and friends, engage in hobbies, and participate in community activities, all of which contribute to the emotional fulfillment and happiness of the individual, which far outweighs the profit that they are able to gain. The impact of this is fostering a culture of trust and respect, where employees feel valued and understood, further enhancing emotional well-being. But fifthly, there's more revenue due to the workspace, allowing for longer business operating hours every weekday. This means higher potential revenue earning capacity. This is a direct response to their line of logic that, there aren't enough workers to cater to customers. We think that this is just not true, as this is worse on your side when everyone works on the same time at the same place. People aren't autonomized individuals. Communication is profound on our side of the house as well. Just because there's not a shared schedule, it does not mean that they cannot communicate outside. It is in fact easier to gather outside of work, which I will be elaborating on this later on. So we think that we further take that clash. But thirdly, and last but not least, I'm going to weigh the debate for you and explain why we take this debate in both the long and the short term. So in the long term, firstly, improved work-life balance and reduced stress contribute to the sustained well-being, which means that employees are less likely to experience burnout and more likely to maintain high levels of job satisfaction and personal happiness, which we think is important and we should prioritize. This sustained well-being leads to longer and more fulfilling careers. But in the short terms, employees have more time to relax and pursue personal interests, often bring out fresh perspectives and ideas to their work. A balanced lifestyle encourages creative thinking and innovation. We think this can only be exclusively achieved on our side of the house when they have the time to take a break, when they can take a breather in order to evaluate such ideas. We think that it's exclusively achieved on our side of the house, which can be highly beneficial for organizational growth and competitiveness. We prioritize the quality of work over the quantity of work. So the crucial comparative here is that their best case only has tokenistic benefits, which we can also achieve without the pump that they perpetrate on their side of the house. Their worst case is the status quo, where individuals are miserable, all being crammed in one space, working for hours on end, and often ending their lives from how stressed they are. Mental health also benefits significantly from a balanced work-life dynamic. Effective management of work and personal life reduces stress and anxiety, major contributors of mental health issues, which directly addresses their point about how there will be mental health issues on their side, on our side of the house, which we think are perpetrated worse on their side of the house when you don't get a break, when you have to work hours on end, where you get exploited by your employer to do more work. But second class, which side better promotes cohesion in the workspace? So opposition's principal arguments hinge on the flawed premise that there will be social disorder because there's no shared schedule. So I have two responses to this. Firstly, just because all workers are able to decide their work hours without company interference doesn't mean individual workers can't discuss together in their private chats when they want to meet for the team meetings. As leader of opposition has mentioned, communication still exists on our side of the house. Workers are still able to communicate and collaborate with their colleagues because they are free to discuss and choose the same time periods and shifts they want to work and meet for different meetings. Secondly, given that workers are still able to carry out normal company proceedings in our world, we believe that they are able to even better promote cohesion in the workspace. Here, I'll bring out back my previous speaker's material. We believe that flexible working hours allows for less stress and reduced burdens of workers, likely leading to workers feeling more spirited while in the workspace because their mindset doesn't make them associate work with being constantly oppressed by their employers. The workspace culture can be changed, allowing for workers to work at higher productivity levels because they're comfortable with their work. No response from their side of the house. So what this looks like is essentially, for example, you're a mother and you work in the morning. Before you send your child to school, you go to work for a while, and then you send your child to school, and then you can go back to work, and then you can go back to picking up your child and feeding them and putting them to sleep before working overnight. We see that that's exclusive benefits that you can only get on our side of the house, where you are able to balance work-life balance, which can only be achieved on our side of the house, seeing that they have provided no counterfactual on theirs. For all of these reasons, very proud to propose.
Judge, what is the most important thing as debate? We believe that is not happiness or anything. What we believe is that at the end of the day, the amount of money and the efficiency you work at brings individuals and is the most important thing. I'll tell you why in my speech, and rebut some of my opposite the government's arguments. So first, why is this the most important thing? Because if you have good salary, for example, the workers can solve all the problems opposition have told you, right? With different purchases, right? For example, if you're unhealthy, you purchase better food. Or medicine or something. And if they think that you work too much and you have so much stress and you are unhappy, you can basically tell your boss to give you a looser work schedule. And because you are one of the most efficient workers in his company, he will probably agree, right? Because he can't afford to lose his star worker, right? So here are the unique impacts we have brought to you in our side. 1, more productivity, right? Because you are instructed under specific orders from your boss. You know what to do, right? Their side, they have a loose schedule. When you get to work, for example, you don't know what you're going to do today. You have to check through your emails, read all of them, and say, oh, I have a party today. I'm going out with my friends, right? And then you have to go through all of that fuss, right? So it is like really low efficiency. And second of all, we have better cooperation and communication, right? Because in our side, workers are able to meet at specific meetings, for example, anytime and any place, right? At the work.
Information, madam.
Pardon?
Information, madam.
Okay.
Don't you think that mental disorders are worse on your side of the house where workers can't take a break, where they have to work for hours on end?
I'll respond to that later in my rebuttals. So, because they have really high efficiency, right? Because like they are able to communicate anytime. But whilst on the government side, they cannot, right? Because they are in their homes, right? They're staying in their bed, having a bad posture, and working and like playing games at the same time, right? So this is not what we want as the worker, right? It is not what a worker should be burdened to do, right? A worker should work, right? They should not stay at home and be flexible and go to parties in the middle of the work. We believe this is not the worker's job. So thirdly of all, coordination, because people know what they're doing. For example, a project, right? A boss can tell one group of people to do something, another group to do another thing. This leads to really high efficiency and coordination, right? This is coordinated and organized and everyone knows what to do. They arrive at company and get straight at work. Their side, however, they have delays. They could argue about who wants to get like one task, argue about allocation, and it will result in, like, for example, one project being completely done. It's really, really good, while another project is like 0% complete in like the deadline because nobody wants to do it. It's boring, right? So fourth of all, income, because in our side they have stable efficiency. They get the same amount of work done in the same period of more work done in the same period of time. So this leads to stable. not now. Stable work and pay, organized pay, right? Because their side has unstable pay. Since for flexible work, the schedule is unpredictable. You might have to go out for a party or etc., right? But our side, they just do work, right? And they just earn money. So now I'll address the rebuttal, right? So they have said that how are you gonna work with mental disorders? So responding to that, firstly, you can use your money to get someone to help you with your mental problems. And secondly, you can still take breaks. Like it's not like in our side you work 24 hours per day. Not only is weekends a thing, right? You can just go out, right? And summer holidays or something, like for example, you're a teacher, right? If you are flexible, then it will affect your work, right? However, if you are in their side, you might in the summer, if in our side, even if they work more, they might get more stress. But for example, in the summer, they can still go out, right? They have nothing to do. And yeah. Sixthly, technological or societal impact, because we have higher efficiency in the individual and thousands of people working for hundreds of companies. That will be faster technology, faster development, entire society gets benefited, and it will also lead to economic benefits. For example, the company will receive better stocks, better pay, etc. for the workers, right? When the company gets more worth and is more valued, then they can pay workers more, right? So seventh, more like socialization, because in their side, you don't get to talk with your partners, working partners, because you're all at home doing your own thing. However, on our side, in the workplace, you actually get to like talk with each other. This also address their thing about like mental issues or something, because in work, you can socialize. It's not like it's bad, right? Because it doesn't really affect that much your working space. You can discuss, right? Because it will help you discuss. For example, you have to think of brainstorming new ideas in creative ways. For example, creating PowerPoints to do that. Not only it's not boring work, and additionally, a lot of people, they choose, like for example, to be a teacher just because they like being the job. And if they work 24/7 as a teacher, they like it. They actually like it. It is unclear on why the government says that doing a job more leads you to like mental disorders, because a lot of people, they like their jobs, they do it, they try their best, right? They enjoy it. So yeah. And finally, maybe even some family disputes, right? Because when you're at work and you go home suddenly and all these kind of things, random things, your family will probably be mad at you, because one, you're not getting as much money as I think you would, or in our side, where probably the family will have better conditions, economic conditions, right? And all the living quality is obviously better in our side because they have work faster, they get more pay, right? So this means that you're more conditioned to, for example, buy higher quality pillows to help with your rest, or higher quality medicine, or all these kind of stuff. And you can live in like a bigger house and etc., right? And your family's not happy that, oh, you're not even trying your hardest at work, you're just relaxing and being flexible, right? So this means that your own family will get fed up at you for not like taking work seriously, right? So at the end of the day, we believe that efficiency is on top, right? It can help with the problems, right? Because money, you can solve a lot of problems by higher quality stuff, right? So we believe that the government case is not realistic, as like basically it is just making you very, very uncoordinated and lead to really bad things. So because of that, please vote for opposition. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, a quick clarification. While their side accuses us of not providing a counterfactual, judge, we tell you that the counterfactual is very obviously the status quo. We recognize that it's not perfect, but it is much better than the gov's alternatives. So summarizing this debate simply, our side focuses on individual and societal needs, whereas their side lives within a fairy tale world of individual wants and happiness. So let me explain. In our speeches, we have told you about the detrimental harms of social disorder, both individually and societally, right? So first of all, for individuals, people pursue different things. Some prioritize work, some prioritize family, some prioritize their own personal freedom. And we also consider people from different backgrounds and different upbringings and with a different sense of time and punctuality, and whereas they don't. We tell you people focus on different things and they have different priorities and different times, which is why it's impossible to coordinate everyone to simply work at the same time. And we gave you a lot of impacts for this, right? For example, unstable income, for example, familial disputes, and for example, unprotected rights in the workplace, of which they never responded to. And therefore, what we're telling you here is that a lot of people are fighting just for their survival, for their livelihood, and they're fighting for their work. Whereas on the opposition, on the government side, they simply talk about how people need to fulfill their happiness. And we recognize that happiness is important, but first of all, you need to ensure that your livelihood is actually stable, right? For example, for unstable income, we tell you that flexible schedules and the potential for increased reliance on part-time jobs could lead to less job security and less stability for the workers. And also for unprotected rights in the workplace, think about labor unions, right? Their bargaining power comes from group workers, from collective power, right? But everyone's so flexible, you can't really gather the same amount of people in the right place. And also think right? For example, if you talk about social movements, like protecting the minorities or protecting different rights of people, then if you can't even make sure that everyone gathers in one place, then basically it wouldn't happen, right? And they never responded to this. Their only response towards our individual rights and like basically needs, they talk about how people could get mental health illnesses for not being able to do whatever they like. But however, first of all, we tell you that is not the case. First and most obviously, mental health illnesses come from a lot of different factors. Like it could come from trauma, or it could come from like family backgrounds, or it could come from your childhood, or maybe the people you meet. So just because you're working all hours does not mean that you will definitely get mental illnesses. And second of all, although we recognize that people are working immensely hard right now and they do suffer, we tell you that this is symmetric on both sides because it is not the consequence of regulating when people work. It's more like a consequence of the meritocracy of our social standing today, because our social structure asks us to work hard to achieve what we want, and it asks us to push upwards to do what we can to get what we want. And therefore, that is why people are so stressed, so anxious, and that is much more likely to cause mental illnesses. And it's not a result of like because you're forced to work from 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. and that therefore you get mental illnesses. And that's absurd. They're all blaming this on a set of schedules. And overall, we tell you that we have a much broader win upon productivity because at least people can show up on time, they can coordinate and work together. Whereas on their side, people are working alone just for their happiness, for their individual wants, right? They tell you that, oh, if they get individual happiness, if they get their wants, then basically they're going to work harder. But that's not the case. For example, think about when people procrastinate, right? They get the short-term benefits of happiness. You're like, oh, I can scroll my phone for like 5 more minutes, and then you get happiness. But do you become more productive? No, you're wasting all that time. You're wasting that energy just for your phone and for your happiness. And therefore, we tell you that although we recognize that happiness is important, just establishing this universal flexible working week is not going to help. In fact, we tell you at least on our side, we still have like set weekends, right? You have weekends to enjoy your life, to do what you can. And if you and you can allocate that according to your needs. But then for their side, the entire week is up to the individual. And it's important to note that they tell you that the individuals have like complete freedom over their like schedules, right? But then think about like the companies, right? If you have to allocate like 100 people or like 1,000 people to have the same schedule exactly, then what is the difference? What is their uniqueness, right? And in the end, we tell you that we have a better sense of social cohesion because everyone's working together and everyone's working for their lives, and everyone at least has a decent job, they have their rights protected, and therefore proud to oppose. Thank you.
Which is more likely to make a misdiagnosis? A doctor that's been working for 30 hours straight, or a doctor that has separated his work across 2 days in shifts of 16 hours and 14 hours? We see that on our side of the house, at a point at which communication between workers is not an a priori good on either side of the house, the fact that it exists on both sides of the house already is sufficient to disprove most of the claims coming from opposition. And we see that opposition realizes this themselves and made a last-ditch attempt in their reply to try to undermine the benefits that they bring to our case by not engaging with them at all. We see that most of the speech that you listened to just now, Judge, was a misconstruing of the abject benefits that we claim on our side of the house that have gone unresponded to in the entirety of this debate. Now, before I get into that, let's look at some of the main clashes in this debate. We see that the most vulnerable stakeholder and the most important stakeholder is the worker, right? We see that without we note very simply that without the working class, a society cannot function by itself. We see that at the core of this debate is which side is able to best provide workers the most fulfilling lives they can while still like maintaining a level of just productivity in general for a company, while still maintaining, for instance, the economic prosperity of a nation, of an individual worker, right? You see, to this extent, side opposition only has very vague claims about the benefits of the status quo around how it quote unquote protects people's mental health. And for instance, like they pointed to things like, for example, company welfare schemes, which our first speaker has already proven to you to be very tokenistic in nature and not reflective of an actual of the worker class in society. However, what we gave you on our side was the unique benefit of time. We gave you the benefit that having agency over one's time reduces one instance and one channel of oppression by which large companies, for instance, oppress the people working under them, right? Instead of providing a quote unquote social disorder on the outside of the house, we see that the addition of just specific and the addition of specific and also unanimous mechanisms like communication between workers outside guarantees whatever harms they try to say are lost on our side of the house. So for instance, workers are still able to unionize. In fact, they're even better able to unionize under our side of the house because they aren't constrained by having a large portion of their time dedicated to work and work adjacent content, right? So we see that most of the time when you have a more dynamic work agenda, it's just much easier to negotiate a flexible arrangements between people. Therefore, the harm they bring to our side is one that exists on theirs and not really on ours, right? But even if we accepted their claims of quote unquote not being able to meet up more in general, we see that most of the time meetings in whatever way, shape, or form, whatever actions you take for a company do not go to the worker directly, right? The worker doesn't reap the benefits of whatever profits the company gives them. Instead, what we propose on our side is that with the addition of a dynamic time schedule in which a worker is able to control which time, this essentially reminds companies of their principal right and their principal obligation, as I stated in my speech in Deputy, to the people of a particular nation. I've already proven to you time and time again with specific mechanisms, and my whip has done it as well, why the most important part of this debate is that companies owe a duty of care towards the people that work for them. There are inherent tax on whatever nation adopts this company in general. There are a tax upon the mental and physical health of people. There are tax towards all of the abject benefits that they haven't challenged on their side of the house at all. And therefore, they must be held accountable to ensure the greatest amount of prosperity that they can bring to a worker's life, the greatest amount of, for instance, meaning, or just letting workers access a much more dignified and a much more actualized life in general. Therefore, for the protection of the most important stakeholders in our community, of our nation in general, go with side proposition.